So we're building this company called Issue. So it's a Sydney-based startup, and what we're doing here is we're building a platform that can build mobile magazines that's interactive. And we actually came from absolutely no mobile experience about 2 years ago. So this is how long I haven't updated this slide. We actually got approved about 2 months ago. So just a bit of background on Issue. So we started to see a really big disruption in media, that brands are becoming like publishers, not in a technical sense, but the role they play in media. So everyone needs to think about their hashtag, their copies and everything. An example would be like Red Bull and Net-a-Porter. And bloggers, we've been working with some of the top bloggers. So they're influencing an audience at social scale. And the reason why we're here is really mobile, right? This is the new distribution. So when we look at the three elements, it almost becomes like a foundation of a new media movement. So what we've been seeing is on the market, there are people doing a lot of magazines on tablets, mainly using like Adobe solution. And then a bit of background, we actually had no mobile developers. So what we were trying to do in the company was, hey, we got a little bit of money left. Should we hire a designer, or we hire a outsourced mobile developer who knows Objective-C? But because we realized, hey, there's a lot of problem in the whole publishing industry, maybe that can be a core competency. So we grabbed our RubyMotion license. It's like it's 5 months old. We haven't really looked at the motion code yet. So we started to build it. And also recently we've been looking at the people who've been doing this stuff on their own. So Ross, he was a digital designer from Object. So it's an Australian design center. So he's been building this custom app for 2 years. He got a lot of like awards, like Webby Award, tons of digital award. But one of the reasons he had to stop doing is every one of the app that he custom built is spending 6 months, 30% of his time, and under agency rate is like 70K, and they're massive. So tools like Adobe just simply doesn't work. So another element on the market is a lot of the app, even the app that's built using motion. So in app, I think there's a huge distribution problem. Like people tend to forget what they have downloaded, because a lot of content get to really locked down into individual app store. So before we jump on to the motion, and some of the background is important on how we approach building this particular app. So Issue, now we want to build something more lightweight, open and social. So we looked at all the possible way on the market. So I'll jump onto it. So we're a firm believer of HTML5, and we looked at all the solutions out there, like UI frameworks, RubyMotion, Objective-C, and all the possible tools and bridges out there. And if we would have gone with like a PhoneGap, you just feel like any other PhoneGap app, the same flow and the touch, like everything's a bit the same. And we're Ruby developers, so we thought, can we build a hybrid app that's really fast and also really sleek? So we went in to try to take the bits of HTML5 and also some of the UI and some of the capability in the iOS SDK framework and put together this. So the game plan that we're doing is how do we take what element from Ruby and into our mobile app, and what are the elements that we take into the app, and what are the elements we want to keep on HTML, and what library are we going to use. So to start with, you guys can give me some comment on if anything we're doing is wrong. It's our first attempt, so feel free to critique. The initial reaction, we all know it. We got 5 guys here, so really long methods, and so the good part about Ruby is the mixins. I'm going to share some of the elements that we have learned during the mixins. We do just a little bit of testing, probably not enough. And the way that we're using the model, we're trying to make it more like a active, like a resource type of model. We didn't use any library because we thought, hey, just playing a Ruby object, if we can have some class method happening and assign attributes, like active model, maybe that's a good way to start. And on the view layer, right, we need to build a magazine viewer.
Ready? Yeah, that was all that was ordered? Yeah, no worries. Sorry.
So good. I think I was missing out on something. So on the view layer, it's a magazine, so we need to have the view component to be viewing. So the game plan we're going is to have a scroll view and a bunch of web views and doing the 3-card technique to be able to like viewing content. And we decided all the scrolling and all the pagination is handled in native, so it's fast. So on the scroll view, we're using just the paging enable property. So it's going to give us a lot of paging already. And for also another feature in Issue is if the page is too long, we're going to paginate within the article to go across multiple pages. So when we're doing that, we're also trying to use the paging enable, so the pagination and snapping, they're all handled in native instead of HTML. So here's a comparison. I think it's cutting out on the top. It's the comparison between Rails, our magazine's controller, which is doing the really basic CRUD, and we're doing something pretty neat on the install tracking. So hopefully, when the user actually opens the app and after download, it's fully personalized based on which magazine they actually came from. As for the magazine controller on the other side, what we have identified is, Ruby is great for mixins. So we're going to bring in the app notification. So that's a very lightweight framework that we put together on notifying things. We probably didn't know about the ecosystem well enough to actually find a library for that. Also tracking. So here is, I was talking to actually James earlier, that what's the difference jumping from a Rails web developer to here. So feel free to critique if you have any advice. So we're currently trying to put all those setup, all those Objective-C handlers on the top, like the view will appear, and then our actions in a group. And below, if we have any specific delegate handlers, we just put them way down there. So yeah, mixing Ruby and iOS. And the next part is about how the web environment talk to the native environment. So when 37 Signal released their Basecamp on RubyMotion, so they have this article on how they have a bit of code in data attribute to be influencing if they want to have a stack view sliding in or an alternative view to be displaying the web element. So we kind of take that element and the learning there to be building a set of attributes. Basically, you can put things on your web HTML, and then you can kind of track different type of actions, or we have other example doing loading different type of views. So if that could be a model, or could be an entire web new view. Here's how we're passing events between. So we have created a protocol with 3 messages. So the messages includes, I'm not sure if I can show it here. Basically action, label, and data. And then kind of serialize that into a URI and create a little iframe that will kill itself once it's instantiated. Probably in iOS 8, we're going to move on to the window, post messages API. Yeah. And here we have a global event trigger on all the events in Backbone. So the app is more it mixing all the Backbone stuff. So we got an array of native events. If we detect it's native, all the messages kind of push into the app environment. And on the app side, we have an observer pattern. So now on page load and on head load, we can do interesting things. So a bit on testing. So because now we have like the tracking module on Rails and RubyMotion actually quite identical. They share the same API, and we can use like a Ruby to be able to like test, which is cool. So on the HTML5 side, it's just a lot of benchmark. Some of the early version of the scroller we implemented HTML in JS. It was actually tough to hit like 60 frames per second, but we went through a couple of rewrites of the CSS and JavaScript. So towards the end, we were doing like a stream view, hitting close to 60 frames per second. And the process that we actually went into making it really fast is like offload the expensive stuff to native if possible, and then using the web transform trick to trigger the GPU. But there's a trade-off in memory because it's rendering those like textures and cells. Images is actually the #1 trigger on the frame rate. So yeah, we had to actually do a lot to optimize. Style calculation and layout, just basically what you read on HTML5 rocks, like the process of identifying those repaints and refloats. So the outcome is interesting. So what we have done is every time when you publish an issue, you can go to the issue stand. It's like a magazine ad, but because it goes there, we can also serve the HTML5 on the web straight away. So on a short URL like Issue.by, for example, Philly, you can share them, and we can render a rich preview on Facebook and Twitter, and user can also embed onto their site. We're talking about some interesting use cases actually install, so at events or maybe inside a retail store, because the HTML5, you can display them on a 70-inch screen or all the way down to a tablet. So this is one of the example there. So here's a video on the back end, what we have done. So here's the issue publishing tool. This is where you manage and publish stuff. And here's where we aggregate all the content around the brand. So from your blog, social media, or even product feed. And when you build an issue, I don't think the aspect ratio is correct, but it's just web-based. So when we build an app, it's about drag and drop UI. And when you write the content, it's mainly like blogging. So publishing, making it feel like blogging. And there's a bunch of elements you can use. For example, video. You can tag products to build like a shoppable story. Yeah. So here's an example of creating something like a lookbook. And here we can tag the products around the brand. I'll just pop a few things in there. Well, this is not really motion related, but when we build a UI on the admin, we have the mobile design in mind. So all the buttons, they're really fat, because we're hoping one day, maybe we can build a tablet app that can also do the publishing. So that's, and on the design side, we can't really see it. We actually got a live preview working, so you can do multi-column rendering, full screen images, in-page pagination, all through the browser and CSS, and that can feed it straight into the. And here's a video. I don't think it's. So it's the actual output of an issue. So here, all the scrolling, all the offline capabilities implemented in RubyMotion. So that's the scroll view working together with a web view. We have also like an offline compiler that compile an issue into an offline environment. And here, yeah, they just went crazy with the animated GIFs. And most of the elements, some of them they're still web, so these footnotes and popovers. But when we do the menu and other elements, they're all native. So yeah, that's what it looks like. So So currently we have an internal library that it's probably not ready to be open source yet, but some of the key learnings and patterns, we put it into a folder called Hive. It's about building really fast hybrid apps in RubyMotion. And we have created like a mobile layout framework called Spring.css. That's what's handling all these like magazine type of layout. There's also a current is doing data processing, so how we aggregate from the internet, RSS, products, and social media. Yeah, so we started a little co-working space in Surrey Hills. It's called Hacker Labs. So we got really good hackers and creative in the same room. It's really small, but we just call it boutique space. Yeah, so that's another shot. Yeah, that's Issue. So the big vision here is really to drive content to commerce through the power of storytelling and on mobile. That's the most exciting medium since the birth of internet. Happy hacking.
What's your plans for Android and stuff?
I signed up the RubyMotion 3.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to be able to start there. I'd like to learn what's the status on that. For example, on the UI kit side, and also the version 3.
It uses all the like native Android stuff, like RubyMotion 2 uses for iOS and OS X.
Yep.
But just with nicer Ruby love.
Yeah. So we don't have money to build Android, but I think we're hoping the R&D check, the refund is coming in a month. So when that kicks in, we're going to get someone to build an Android app. Yeah. Any other questions?
So you're using Backbone in the app?
Yeah. So just the backbone, and we don't actually use backbone too much. I think the event system it's a good thing. We kind of mix that into the app objects. So all the events actually punch through this app object and kind of delegate into different places, like to layouts. And on the view and model side, we tend to only do it when it's required. We kind of try to delay those decisions because the more JS we throw at the problem, the slower it gets. I mean, hopefully that will change. By the way, Mark is our mobile engineer, so he does most of the work. We learn mobile RubyMotion together, but I spend most of the time in the JS and the web environment, and probably the protocol, the API between the app and also the motion. And he actually learned it from scratch. So so if you guys know how to go to the next level, feel free to advise us in any way.
I hear this is really nice screencast.
Huh?
I hear this is really nice screencast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we get like a free pass for 3 months or something? People we actually got money to pay for screen pass. Sweet. Thanks.
Do you want to be recorded, Garrett?
No. There's nothing else to say.